Konnichiwa. So basically, I was asked to do a vlog on Lord of the Rings, and I thought about this for a while, because Lord of the Rings has actually played a huge part in my life, in my early teens anyway. There were many different versions of Lord of the Rings, but two really stand out for me. Of course, the versions I'm aware of include the radio play, which was done on the BBC, and that starred Ian Holm as Frodo back then. He then played Bilbo in the live-action films. And there's the Sauzanne's version, which was interesting for its time because it was made, I think, back in the 70s, and they actually used live-action actors and then they animated over the top of it. It was such an expensive process that they actually couldn't finish making the film. So I think it gets to about partway through the Two Towers. I seem to remember Merry and Pippin meeting Treebeard or something, and then it kind of just comes to a halt. At one point, even the Beatles were looking to buy the rights to the Lord of the Rings and make the film themselves. I think like George Harrison was going to be Gandalf or something. Can you imagine how that would have turned out? That would have been interesting, but that was back in the 1960s. The two versions that had the biggest impact on my life, though, were the live films that were released between 2001 and 2003. And, of course, the original series books by J.R.R. Tolkien. The way I came about them was kind of weird, I guess. It was Boxing Day 2001, and my parents were looking for something for us to do. No, it wasn't Boxing Day, it was a couple of days after Boxing Day. But they were looking for something for us to do. And they took us off to the cinema to see Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. And I fell in love with so many aspects of the film. I mean, I'll admit now, I was 15 years old and I kind of had a bit of a thing for Elijah Wood off the back of that film. But I also fell in love with the cinematography, the epic score, the costumes, just so much of it. And actually, for my next birthday, I went off to the Science Museum, and the Science Museum in London had a Lord of the Rings exhibition. It had all the costumes, it had props, it had how they got into makeup and all sorts of things. It was absolutely incredible, and that's what I went to do for my next birthday when I was 16. Anyway, I guess what you could say is I was completely hooked. Anyway, after seeing the first film, The Fellowship of the Ring, I went off to one of the local bookshops with some of the Christmas money that I'd got, and I bought the trilogy. And I read the lot in a week, which is no mean feat. I mean, it's actually split up. There's the 3 volumes that you think of. They're actually split up into 2 books each, apart from the final one, which has got the appendices as a final book. So there's actually like 7 books in total. Each volume is like something like that. It's like 3 inches thick or something. So this is pretty impressive for a 15-year-old who's only got 1 week left of their Christmas holidays. I think the thing that got me hooked was the fantasy element. But also the history. Tolkien himself studied things like Anglo-Saxon language and knew about the sagas and stories of the Saxons, Vikings, things like that. And as a history student and as somebody who'd always loved this period of history, I think I found that side of things to be quite fascinating. It was a modern day sort of Viking or Saxon saga story, and that's what I found really interesting because I was aware of a few of them, and even at that age, and I thought that it was quite interesting to see a more modern take on this, using elements that I was quite familiar with. I mean, I actually studied Anglo-Saxon history at university as well, and I have a feeling that it was Lord of the Rings that kind of cemented that for me. I had a choice between literature and history, but I think, weirdly, even though it's a work of literature, it made me go down the route of history. I think it did have that influence on me, because I wanted to know more about the real Saxons, Vikings, all that kind of era, all that kind of work. And when I was at university, we did look at sagas, we did look at the Anglo-Saxon stories, and that was quite interesting to see how the culture was built up. It wasn't just about events and dates. I think people get this wrong about history, where they think it's just dates and facts and figures. It's not, it's interpretation of source, and we can learn a lot about people themselves from the kind of stories that they were interested in. What I remember, I think, most from reading the books as well, is that there were changes. For example, the character of Tom Bombadil was dropped, which I think was a good thing, because and I won't ruin it for you, but I don't think he contributes a huge amount to the story. You can skip the Tom Bombadil chapters and not really lose anything much. I think the films don't match the book's events exactly, but I enjoyed both, almost as separate stories. I think it was a really good adaptation. I think what Peter Jackson did with it was incredible. But that's basically all I have time for. So that's kind of how I got into Lord of the Rings and how it became such a big part of my life. And next time I'll do another one, but I'll do it on the races of Middle-earth. It's going to be a kind of, next few videos I guess are going to kind of be a Lord of the Rings 101, what you need to know kind of thing. If you've heard a lot about it but not yet seen the films, read the books, etc. I'm going to give you little details about it, see if it can hook you in. Or, I don't know, if you're just a fan and you just like hearing this stuff. Who knows? So that'll be in the next video. It'll be the races in Middle-earth. So, sayonara.